So with there being 4 games left of this season, I thought that now would be a good time to rank every single manager from the Championship. So everyone that's either been sacked or is still currently working, they are going to be compiled into this list from worst to best. Obviously this is just my opinion, so feel free to disagree with me in the comments down below. What I want to know from you guys is who would you say have been the best 5 and worst 5 managers during this season. For this list I'm not going to be including the caretaker managers who are currently in charge of some of the Championship clubs, but I'm excited to get into this one. So without further ado, let's hop into my list. So coming in at the bottom of the list, I'm afraid it's going to have to be Paul Hurst, the former Ipswich Town manager. He was sacked towards the end of October with just a 6.7 win ratio. He only picked up 1 win in his time at Ipswich and left them rooted to the bottom of the table, where they still remain there after their relegation was confirmed last week. Paul Hurst definitely did make mistakes, but it wasn't the easiest job to take on with some of the players they sold. They sold the likes of Martin Wycorn, David McGoldrick, Joe Garner. I think there was a bit of optimism when he first arrived that the club was going in a different direction, but things quickly turned sour, and with only a 6.7 win ratio, he comes in at the bottom of the list. Coming in next, we're going to have Josh Lukai, the former Sheffield Wednesday manager. He really had an awful run with this Wednesday squad and was rightly sacked earlier in this season. He left Sheffield Wednesday in 18th in the Championship. Since then, Steve Bruce has come in and done a terrific job there and got them into touching distance of the playoffs, really. Lukai, I think his major downfall was just how stubborn he was and his reluctancy to play some of their better players, people like Hutchinson and Westwood. Why he wasn't playing Westwood, it absolutely baffles me. Since he's come back into the squad, he's proven himself to be one of the best goalkeepers in the Championship. Over the past 5 or so seasons, he's been one of the most consistent goalkeepers, and why Lukai wasn't leaning on some of those more experienced players, I'm not too sure about. Wednesday really did have some dreadful performances earlier on in the season, and looking at what that squad's now capable of, Lukai had an awful season. Next in the list is going to have to be Guy Rowett from Stoke City. He took the side who were favourites to win the league this year and turned them into a really bland outfit. He was sacked by Stoke when he had a 31% win ratio. In the summer, I think they spent in excess of 40 million or something like that. They came down to the Championship with what looked to be quite a capable squad, actually, with a lot of experience in there. But the football was bad, and fairly swiftly he lost the fans. And he didn't help himself by being so cocky at the start of the season either.
Did you hear that, Gary? Hopefully get a win against Stoke, he said.
Obviously hasn't seen the bookmakers' odds, has he?
Next on the list, I'm going to have Phil Parkinson from Bolton Wanderers. The situations have been tough around Parkinson this season with everything that's gone on above him at the club, but even so, the football has been absolutely awful at times from Bolton. So far this season, Bolton fans have only seen their team score 29 goals. That's the lowest in the Championship. Even Ipswich, who are sat bottom, have scored more than them so far, and to add to that, they've conceded 72, so it's just been a depressing season all round for Bolton. At times, I don't think that Parkinson's done well tactically either. He's certainly been limited by options, but overall, I don't think he's done a good job there at all this year. Coming up next, I'm going to have former Reading manager Paul Clement. He was sacked by the club on the 6th of December after he left them just above the relegation zone on goal difference. Honestly, I'm of the mindset if he was still the Reading manager, they'd probably be going down this season. Things at the club were on a really downward trend. He only had a win percentage of 23.3%. Under his management, the club was going backwards and a change needed to be made sooner rather than later, and since then Reading have gone to vastly improve. Next up on my list, I'm actually going to throw in Nathan Jones, the current Stoke City manager. Now, at this point in time, he's got a worse win percentage than Gary Rowett does at Stoke. He's only got a 17.6% win ratio, which really isn't anything to shout about. He's come into a squad where he's not got his group of players there at the moment, that's fine, but he's still got a very capable team in there. I go back to what I was saying about Guy Rowett. This side had over 40 million invested to it in the summer. He's not been able to get the results out of them so far, albeit there have been a lot of draws at his time at Stoke City, but Stoke are actually higher in the table under Guy Rowett than they are now under Nathan Jones, and I think, you know, the club should give him time over the summer to get everything sorted out, but what I've seen so far, I've not really been convinced. And then up next, I'm going to throw in Marcelo Bielsa, the current Nottingham Forest manager. Now, when Aitor Karanka left the club, they were 4 points off the playoffs, so very much that was still in touching distance. Since Marcelo Bielsa has come into the job, though, that has just been slipping away from them. They now find themselves 8 points away from the top 6, and overall, I think he's made quite a few mistakes, really. The system that he plays doesn't incorporate a lot of Nottingham Forest's better players. Their record signing, João Carvalho, has been left on the bench for the majority of his time there so far. After the summer transfer window, I think the expectancy was quite high at Nottingham Forest with some of the money they spent and with some of the players they brought in as well. Would I trust trust Martin O'Neill to have a summer transfer window and to go into next season with Forest? I'm not so sure. I think there is quite a bit of pressure on the Forest board to sack Martin O'Neill, with the majority of the fan base not happy with him at the moment. I don't think he's done a very good job there so far, and I'm not sure I trust him with next season either. Up next, we're going to have Paul Lambert, the Ipswich manager. Now, he came into what was pretty much an impossible job. He came into Ipswich while he was at the bottom of the table. They had already been outcasted at the bottom, you know, they were far adrift at that point. Realistically, he was never going to keep them up, but what he has done is installed a bit of spirit into this squad. I think the football that Ipswich have been playing over the past few weeks has been better. He's only won 3 games during his time at Ipswich so far, but he has grinded out quite a few draws. The fans feel more connected to the manager now, and it's a good omen to be going into next season with. Despite their relegation, he couldn't have really done much about it. Up next, we're then going to have Neil Harris, the Millwall manager. Now, he sort of set himself an impossible target to reach, with last season finishing 8th in the league. Arguably, he was one of the best managers in the league last year, you know, that's undoubtable. This season, Millwall have had quite a crash. They could still be relegated. They're currently fighting it out near the bottom of the table. I don't think many people expected Millwall to be challenging for the top 6 once again, but equally to that, I didn't think they'd be quite as bad as they have been at times this year. There's still quite a bit of talent in that squad, I feel like. He's not had a brilliant season. In my opinion, I think that Millwall will just about survive. They've got a game in hand on some of the teams below them at the moment, so for that reason, I'll put Neil Harris at this part of the list. And then we've got Paul Cook of Wigan Athletic. Now, in fairness to Wigan, they've done better than their last outing in the Championship. They've been a bit of a yo-yo club over the past few years, getting relegated then promoted back to the Championship. This season, I feel as if that squad they've got there is capable of better than, you know, this relegation scrap they're currently in. They're just 2 points above the relegation zone at this point in time. They had a fairly decent transfer window, in my opinion. You know, they signed the likes of Joe Garner, Josh Windass came in, they got Reece James on loan as well to add to that. Other players in that squad are very capable, players like Nick Powell when he's not injured. The objective for Wigan this season was just to survive, and at this point they are doing that, so I can't hold that against Paul Cook, but I can't help but feel like they're capable of a bit better. Next up on the list, I'm going to throw in Steve McClaren of QPR. At the start of the season, QPR were one of the teams who I was fancying for relegation. With the transfer embargo they were put under and the EFL restrictions after the summer, I thought that QPR would really have a torrid time this year. They lost their first 4 games of the season. They got battered 7-1 by West Brom away, and it was looking like McClaren was completely out of his depth with this squad, but in fairness to him, he did manage to turn it around. Around October time, they went on a terrific run in the league where they got in touching distance of the playoffs, and before we got into 2019, they were actually playing some decent football. I do think it was probably the correct decision to part ways with McClaren after the awful run of form they went on, but judging by his whole season, I thought he had an average year. He didn't do too bad with QPR in the whole. Next up, I'm going to have Thomas Farke at Brentford. He came into the job after Dean Smith left Brentford mid-season to go to Aston Villa and really didn't get off to a great start. He only won 1 of his first 10 games with this squad. However, when he changed the system and Brentford went to a 3-4-3 formation, they seemed to pick up their form a little bit more. So far this season, they've scored 66 goals. That's just 3 less than Leeds United. It's just their defensive issues which have really held them back lately. Paul Warne, the Rotherham manager, is going to come up next on my rankings. Now, this was a tough one as to where to place him because Rotherham are currently sat in the relegation zone, but you have to take into account the size of this job at Rotherham, you know, to keep them up in the Championship, and they could still go on to do that. They're currently 2 points adrift of safety. I think a lot of people were quite surprised that Rotherham managed to bounce straight back up into the league after last time they were here. They were absolutely awful. They finished on 23 points in the 16-17 season. A lot of people at the start of the year were predicting them to finish rock bottom as well. You know, looking over the squad, not a lot of people thought there would be that much quality in there, but they've proved quite a lot of people wrong, and they have picked up some big results along the way this year. If Rotherham do go on to be relegated, I don't think that that can really be any fault of the manager. I'm then going to throw in Tony Mowbray of Blackburn Rovers, another one of the promoted sides coming up this year. I think that Blackburn's expectations levels were raised earlier in this season after they started the year so well. At one point, it was looking like they may even push towards the top 6. They had a bit of a fall off earlier in this season, although with their last 2 games they have picked their form back up again. The main priority for Blackburn was to just establish themselves as a Championship club again, and I think that Tony Mowbray and Blackburn have gone on to more than do that this year. And then we've got Tony Pulis. Where to start with this manager? Currently, Borough find themselves at 7th in the table. However, there's a lot more to read into Middlesbrough's season than just their position in the league table. I think the majority of Borough fans haven't really enjoyed this season. Despite them winning games at times, even when they were winning matches, it wasn't great to watch. So far this season, Rotherham United in the relegation zone have scored more goals than Borough have. A couple of weeks ago, they went on a really bad run. They lost 6 games on the bounce in the league. And even if Borough do go on to make it into the top 6, I don't particularly think that Pulis has done a stellar job there. And then we've got Aitor Karanka coming in next, coming in much higher onto my list than Martin O'Neill, the current Forest manager. When Karanka went ahead and left Nottingham Forest. They were sat 4 points off the playoffs, and despite going on a bit of a dodgy run towards the end of his tenure there, they played some terrific football earlier on in the season, having João Carvalho operating in that number 10 position, playing off Lewis Grabban. Defensively they were sound, and they did draw a lot of matches under Karanka, there's no doubt about that, but I thought the club under Karanka was in a much better position than it is now under Martin O'Neill. Then next up we're going to have Graeme Potter at Swansea City, in charge of one of the clubs coming down to the league this season from the Premier League. Now, Graeme Potter was put in a bit of an awkward position really, with everything going on with the owners at Swansea at the moment. They had a bit of a fire sale over the summer transfer window, and he was left with a pretty bare-bones squad in all honesty. I think he's done a very good job there though this year. At times they have been quite inconsistent defensively. They do tend to shoot themselves in the foot sometimes, either through fault of their own from playing at the back and giving the ball away in silly areas, or other mistakes like that. But looking at the average age and how young this Swansea squad is at the moment, he's been able to utilise their youth academy. He's got the best out of some of their young players this season, and considering, like I said, how many players Swansea lost over the summer, I think that Potter's done a good job there. And then making it in at the midway of my rankings, in at 12th position, I'm going to have Alex Neil, the Preston North End manager. Now, expectations around Preston were fairly high going into this season. We just missed out on the top 6 last season, finished in 7th position. I mean, I predicted us to finish in the top 6 this season. That could have been the case perhaps if it wasn't for how many injuries and suspensions we've had along the way this season. We started the year off really badly. We were bottom of the table after 10 matches, but I think you have to give plaudits to Alex Neil. He was able to turn that around. Obviously there has been a lot of drama going on around Alex Neil lately, but thankfully he has signed a new 3-year contract with Preston, so I'm looking forward to seeing what the future holds for North End and Alex Neil. After that, we're going to have Frank Lampard in his first season in management. I'd say that Frank Lampard overall is meeting expectations. People expected Derby to be in and around the playoffs, and at this point in time they're doing that. I think maybe there's an argument to be made that at times they've perhaps been a bit too over-reliant on some of their loan plays. You know, when Mason Mount was at the side, their form really dipped down, and when Harry Wilson wasn't quite at it, they couldn't seem to conjure up anything going forward. So it'll be interesting to see how Lampard gets on next season if he doesn't get those loan players back. I think he has made mistakes along the way, but considering it is his debut year in management, I think he's done an alright job for Derby. Jose Gomes for Reading, I think he's done a very good job there actually. They're currently 4 points above the relegation zone, but overall the standard of football at Reading has vastly improved since he's walked in through the door. Under Paul Clement, things were stale and heading backwards at the club. However, since Jose Gomes has come in there, he's completely rejuvenated things, and if they manage to keep hold of some of these loan players and Gomes is still there next season, Reading could seriously surprise a few people next season. And then we're going to have Darren Moore of West Brom. Now, West Brom at the moment are in a really peculiar place because they've gone ahead and announced that they won't be getting a new manager until next season over the summer. So to sack Darren Moore in the first place, I think a few more question marks have been raised over this. He managed to guide West Brom to 4th in the table, and considering how the other teams that were relegated have got on this season, I don't know what much more Moore could have done really. And I know that towards the last few months of Moore being there, things did start to get a little bit stale. The home form really went down the pan, and a few players dipped in form, but to sack Darren Moore at the point they did, and then to not have a plan of who to bring in after him, it just seems a little bit risky from West Brom there. But in at 8th on my list, I'm then going to have Steve Bruce of Sheffield Wednesday. Now, Steve Bruce has just had a really weird season. He's had a cabbage thrown at him, he's been sacked by Aston Villa, he's come back into the Championship and has really done an excellent job with Sheffield Wednesday. His time at Villa ended a little bit stale really, but he took a break from football, came back into it with Wednesday, and since then I think they've been reaping the rewards from it. In 14 matches, he's only lost 2 of them, they've won 6, drawn 6. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do there next season though, because judging by his performance this season, I think he's done an excellent job so far. In at 7th on my rankings, I'm going to have Leigh Johnson and Bristol City. Overall, he's done a fantastic job with this side so far. They're currently in the top 6. Over the past few years in the Championship, it's always been a bit of a tendency for Bristol City to be good going forward, but defensively, they can be a little bit weak. I think they've vastly improved that this season. They have been much better at closing out games, and although he's probably not the most likeable manager in the league, I think you do have to give him quite a bit of credit. Then moving on into the top 6, first of all, I'm going to have Gary Monk of Birmingham. Now, Birmingham's season was probably killed by that 9-point deduction they had earlier on. Up until that point, they were looking like they were going to be challenging for the playoffs, and for a side featuring Lee Camp as their goalkeeper, Gary Monk has worked wonders with this squad lately. Considering the lack of finances over the summer as well, they weren't really able to sign players. Last season, they were the joint lowest scorers with Burton Albion. This season, goals haven't been the problem for them. The emergence of the striker partnership between Cherthams and Lucas Djukovic has been absolutely fantastic. Monk's managed this season very well for Birmingham, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do there in the not too distant future. In at 5th, I'm going to have Dean Smith of Aston Villa. He started the season out at Brentford, but lately has been working wonders with this Villa squad. When you look over Villa's team, they should be in the top 6. You know, they've got an abundance of quality in there. Jonathan Codger's on the bench, and he'd walk into most of the Championship sides. They've won 8 games on the bounce now, and that takes some doing. In the next few games, they should go on to secure their place place in the playoffs for the second season running now, and judging by the form book, Aston Villa would be the squad who's currently in the playoffs who you would be fancying to go up. Despite having a lot of talent in that squad, earlier on in the season under Steve Bruce that talent wasn't showing. The performances under Smith have been a lot better, they've been scoring a lot more goals, they've been looking better defensively as well, and overall you've got to say he's done a terrific job there. The fourth best manager this season, this may surprise a few people, but I'm going to throw Nigel Atkins in there, the Hull City manager. After the summer they had, I think they released about 12 or 13 players over the summer. The club was looking like an absolute mess. They'd lost the span of their side from last season and they were sort of relying on cheap freebies to come in to fill the gaps. At the start of the season they weren't looking great either, they were flirting around the relegation zone. However, suddenly they just managed to switch it on. They went on a fantastic run where they only lost one game out of 14. And I think that with everything that's gone on at the club over the past few years, they've seriously overachieved this season, and Atkins has to play a large part in that. I do think it's a real shame with the ownership at Hull City at the moment, and obviously the fans being discontent with it, because I've got the feeling that this squad they've got at the moment may be ripped up over the summer again, and that is a real disappointment because you do feel as if with a few more additions to this whole squad they could seriously go on to do something next season. And then as my top three, of course it's going to be Wilder, Bielsa and Farke, but what order are they going to go in? To be completely honest, I think that these three are pretty much impossible to split, and whoever you guys think has been the best manager, I'll leave a poll for you guys to vote on. I can't really argue with it. In my opinion, they've all been equally good so far this season, and probably the only fair way for me to split them would be where they're currently sat in the table. So coming in at third, it is going to be Chris Wilder of Sheffield United. Like I said, these three managers have been the best so far this season, and I wouldn't hold it against either of these being the best so far. But Chris Wilder has done an unbelievable job at Sheffield United, both in getting them promoted to the Championship. Last season they had a very good debut year back in the league. This season there's been a bit of a different mentality around United. I think their transfer business has been absolutely superb. They're a very well run club, they play some very attractive football. Wilder has worked absolute wonders at Sheffield United, and judging by sort of the net spend of some other clubs in the Championship, Sheffield United have no right to be where they are at the moment. Coming in second we've got Bielsa. The thing that Bielsa does have over Wilder and Farke is the fact that he's done all of this with Leeds in his first season in English football. Farke had last season and Wilder's been at United for a few seasons now, but Bielsa has just come in and taken the Championships by storm. Yes, I do accept that Leeds have spent a bit of money, you know, they spent quite a bit on Patrick Bamford. Wages will also be quite high on some of their other incomings like Kiko Casilla, but looking at how he's improved some of these players from Leeds who last season looked so average, you know, if you think of some of the performances that this Leeds squad had under Paul Heckingbottom last year, and the contrast to now, it's turned Alioski into one of the best fullbacks in the league this season. There has been money going into this project from Leeds, but it would be foolish to say that Bielsa has only achieved this because he's got a good squad at Leeds. That is not true. Which means coming in at number one, and in my opinion the best manager this season, it has been Daniel Farke at Norwich City. When you look at the scale of the job that he's done there, it's absolutely staggering considering their net spend after losing the likes of Maddison and Murphy in the recent transfer window. Last season Norwich were beyond average in the league, you know. I myself have been guilty of, you know, saying that I thought that Farke's time was up at Norwich last season. One thing I find baffling about this Norwich side as well is they've already outscored the Wolves side from last season, who were one of the best sort of free-flowing attacking teams we've seen in the Championship in recent years. They've already outscored them and there's still 4 games to go of this Championship season. And I don't think you'll find any sort of prediction video on YouTube who was predicting Norwich to go ahead and win the league this year. They even started out in the first month or so in the league not looking all too convincing, but suddenly they managed to snap into their formula, and Daniel Farke has more than proved me wrong this season with what Norwich have been able to achieve. So fair play to him and Norwich, in my opinion, the best manager this season. But guys, there you have it. There is my list from worst to best of every Championship manager this season. Do you guys agree with my selections? Let me know who are your best 5 and worst 5 this season. But apart from that, guys, that will now wrap it up for this video. So if you're going to enjoy, make sure that you leave a like. It is always massively appreciated. Tomorrow will be when my Championship score predictions video is coming out a day earlier than normal, as we do have a full fixture list coming on Friday. But apart from that, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.